the way this will work is Bridgett and I will talk for a little bit, and then we have a microphone out in the audience, and that'll get turned on, and you'll get to ask questions. So, sound good?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, hi Bridgett.
Hi.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And for the great food.
You're welcome. I asked Stacy when I got here, I said, where's the fire? For any of you that saw the promo, it said fireside chat, and I was like, hey, where's the fire pit? She's like, oh no, we just mean like we just chat. And I was like, oh, I thought that big screen TV over there was just going to be like the log, the crackling log with the flames, and that was going to be our fireside chat.
That would have been cool. And we did it right here.
I'm glad I didn't bring s'mores.
So anyhow, so you have, I mean, the food, I mean, we said Bridgett Blough, but you know, it's the Organic Gypsy, but you didn't start, like your first idea wasn't the food truck. So where did this all really begin?
Well, I'm from west of here in the Benton Harbor, St. Joe area, and those of you that have been to Berrien County, it's very lush as far as the fruits and vegetables that are grown in that region. In that county in southwestern Michigan. It's just west of here, and it probably started just being born and raised in that kind of area. And my parents are here tonight. My dad, when we were kids, was really serious about sweet corn in the summer, and we'd go to the fruit stand, which is one of my first jobs I ever had. But the stuff that they picked that day wasn't good enough for our dinner, so he was friends with the farmer, and the farmer would tell him what field to drive in, and we would drive on these like dirt roads way back into these fields in the back acres and pick like our dozen ear of corn for dinner that night. So stuff like that in my childhood definitely, I think, inspired part of my real excitement for local food. I look back at my grandparents, and they were gardeners and had animals. I tell people I have a black thumb. Probably one of the most often asked questions of me is like, oh, do you grow your own food? Because I'm really into the local food. And I'm like, I can't even keep my houseplants alive. So, but I feel like it's the truth. I'm trying with my succulents this year. But I can't even, the potted basil, I've tried with herbs because it's really nice to have fresh herbs, and I'm just unsuccessful. So I like to think that that kind of salt of the earth connection with the land just transpires through me a little bit different than the people in my family that are really avid gardeners and into horticulture. So that's probably part of it, is how I was born and raised. And then really from there, I went to college. My connection to Kalamazoo is I went to Kalamazoo College and studied economics and business there. And for a while, I thought I was going to have some sort of normal job, business job. Not really sure what that even means, but when I graduated, I thought I would work in an office in some capacity, and moved out to San Francisco. Just really interested in kind of being out west and being somewhere new and different. And I have two sisters that live in Northern California, so I had a little family out there, and lived there for a while and tried to get a job, a normal job, and I was really unsuccessful at it for a couple weeks. And then I had this sort of realization of the reason why I was unsuccessful is because I didn't actually want any of the jobs that I was really 50% applying for, just like not really putting myself into what I was actually trying to do, really just lackluster effort. And I'm like, God, why do I not want to write another resume, like a cover letter? Why aren't I actually looking for jobs? And it was like, I actually don't want this job. And so that was good. That was like part one. And then part two is like, okay, if you don't want any of these jobs, then what job do you want that you can go get? And when I started to think about kind of my passions and what I was interested in, I was really into health. And this was about almost 10 years ago. And we were really starting to have some conversations in this country about our culture and how unhealthy we were. And I was like, I'm an advocate for health. I want to help people be healthy. And that was like my mantra of like, I want to help people be healthy. And I went through the avenue that I knew best, which was I played volleyball at K College, and I was really into kind of the body. So I thought in my brain, I equated health with like physical activity and movement. So I started there and I became a personal trainer, and I taught personal one-on-one, and I also taught group classes. And I'm living in California, and it's just, have you guys been to San Francisco?
Yes.
Here? Just like everybody is just, it's not even like they're skinny. It's even hard to explain the culture out there because everybody walks everywhere. They're like drinking their green juice and just like, I don't know, biking and walking, and everybody goes to the farmer's market, and their whole lifestyle is completely different. And being born and raised here where there's like just huge parking lots and SUVs and people who just want to, I don't know, it was just, I was really enamored by this like health culture out there. And I started to get, I got my clients and I was like, okay, I think there's a little bit more to this piece of health. So I became a yoga instructor, and I'm like, okay, and Pilates. So I'm like, all right, there's the movement, but there's also like the mind-body connection and the kind of like the human spirit and all this. I'm like, I have all of the tools that I need to help people be healthy. And I kind of had a little bit of an aha moment. I had a client of mine who was a personal training client, and she had survived a brain tumor. And, I just get to know my clients on a personal level, and I've talked with her quite a bit about it. And the way that she survived her brain tumor, she was in her 30s when she had it, is she radically changed her diet. And she started to eat really, 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 really clean foods. And obviously she survived because she was, my client and lived. And, of course they told her she wasn't going to, and that she had a brain tumor and all this stuff. So she was a real advocate of the clean eating, and kind of having that experience coupled with in general, my experience of, I'd have these clients and they would give me their 100% effort in my sessions with them. A, they were paying me a lot of money, and B, I was putting a lot of effort in, and C, so were they. And I would just make them like run and lift and plank and stretch, just like pouring sweat, heart beating, really efforting to be healthy. And I really started to realize that I didn't really think I was changing their life through working out. That's not where I really thought the big change, the health change came from, was movement. And I started to think that we had this whole thing wrong of go exercise, go exercise, go exercise to get us to be healthy. Because I'm like, we can't crunch and walk and run and bike our way out of the problems that we have, the health problems. And that was a big like, whoa, okay, moment. And through a conversation with my client, her name was Linda with the brain tumor, we were just kind of chit-chatting while she's, doing crunches and squats and all these things. And she's like, Bridgett, you're really passionate about food. And I was like, yeah, because I love to eat. No duh. And she's like, no, I mean like on another level, like you need to do something about this. And I'm like, no, I thought about it. I toured a culinary school when I was 18, but I don't want to own a restaurant. And, no. She's like, just think about it. Like this food is health thing. I think you're onto something. And I went home that night, and I went in the Google bar, and I put my little cursor up there, and then I put in healthy cooking schools, and then I searched. And then I was like, this is what I need to do. And I had actually left California because I'm like, oh, I'm ready to settle down, I'm gonna move back home. Not true. And I was living in Chicago. So Linda, when I met her, she was my client when I was in Chicago, and I Googled healthy cooking school, and wouldn't you know it, there's 2 cooking schools in the country. One is in New York City and one is in San Francisco, California, and I had just left there about a year ago. I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna move back to San Francisco. So through culinary school, that kind of gave me the real, that kind of put me on the path of health. So I kind of got to like health through movement, and then I added the food piece, and then going to culinary school is when I really got the trajectory of like, I want to start a food truck, and it's going to be called the Organic Gypsy. And my parents, they're here today, and they're in the second row. Like I said, I'm from like a farm area, and I got this really good idea that it kind of just came to me a little bit. I was chatting with some friends from my culinary school, and we're going around the table of like, what are we going to do when we graduate in 2 months? And one of my friends like, I want to make ghee, which is just clarified butter. And I'm like, oh, interesting, how are you going to do that? And she's like, I want to have some sort of co-op model. And I was like, interesting hearing her talk. And another woman, she's like, I want to do food and farm tours and go to me. And I'm like, I don't know, I kind of want to go to festivals and feed people where there's really unhealthy food. And my friend said, yeah, you should be like a gypsy. I'm like, yeah, I should. I'm like, but I want to be an organic one. And they're like, I mean, it was like, that's pretty much how I got my idea. It's a little embarrassing to admit that it was so simple and nonchalant about it, but I just got really attached to this idea, and I called my parents who live in southwestern Michigan in this farm area, and I say, hey, I want to start a food truck. I'm going to start a business. And they're like, what's a food truck? This is before the TV shows. I mean, this is in 2011 when there were food trucks out in California, and there were some in New York, but like the food truck TV shows that we know of now, all the food trucks in this town, they did not exist. My college friends didn't know about them. My dad that was 70 didn't know about them. Like, it was just like before it started to really burst throughout the country. And my dad said to me, I think you've spent too long in California. And I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. And I'm like really adamant at this point, like I'm gonna start my food truck. I'm doing this. And pretty much the rest is history after that. But I get a lot of people asking me about kind of the entrepreneurship experience and the startup experience. And a lot of people, the food-based businesses tends to attract people because of a passion and a love for food. And it's in our DNA to love food. I mean, if you think of an infant, you know, for those of us that are breastfed, it's like that's the kind of the first kind of connection of love and food, and just kind of and you know, the first thing that we eat. So a lot of people love food and are passionate about food, so it kind of creates a lot of businesses where people are like, well, I love to cook, I love to bake this one thing, so I'm gonna start a food-based business. So I got a lot of people in the last 5 years reaching out to me like, hey, I wanna start this XYZ food business. And my advice has always been like, if you feel like there is nothing else in the world that you have to do, like if you feel like you have to do this, you should do it. If you feel like there's no other choice you could make because your calling is this specific thing, and within that context you're willing to like work 1,000,000 hours and really dedicate yourself to that, then you should totally do that. But if you don't, then I don't think you should. So that's kind of the full story recap on the kind of the path to deciding I wanted to start a food truck.
Well, how did you end up even finding the truck that you wanted? And like, there's a process there too, isn't it?
Huge process. My mom was the one, she's like, it's like you're birthing a baby. And I'm like, yes. It was awful. I would rather have all of the problems of operating rather than starting up. It was so challenging. I almost didn't think I was going to be able to do it. I mean, there were a couple bad moments where I'm like, I just can't do it. And so once I like got on this like, Dad, I'm gonna start a food truck. He's like the voice of reason. I'm like, I've been Googling, just Googling everything now at this point, and I'm still living in California, and I'm like, I found this place in Portland and they make them, and I'm gonna go buy one. Yeah, I don't know how to change my oil. So you should come with me or I'm gonna go alone, basically. And he's like, oh, fine, I'll go. So he flew out from Michigan to Portland, and I drove like 15 hours to Portland from San Francisco, and it was cool because I got to see a bunch of trucks. And Portland, have you guys ever seen the food trucks in Portland? It's like, it really puts like our little lunchtime live event to shame, because there's like 100 trucks in a parking lot, and then there are multiple parking lots all in the city. So it was really cool just to be inspired by so many people already starting, that they have already had a business of what I wanted to start. I got a lot of ideas and inspiration, and it was really great for that reason, but also, so we go to this like kind of sketchy place where they fabricate food trucks, and we're like looking at these trucks with like 250,000 miles on them and all this equipment in them, and my dad, again, voice of reason, he's like, Bridget, I don't think you should buy a truck with 250,000 miles on it. I'm like, well, I don't know, they're really cheap, like I don't have any money, I don't know what to do. He's like, I think we should just build one. Like, it's plumbing, I can help you. So So that really took a little turn, and that's what really started this really, really intensely challenging part of the experience of actually building the food truck. Was actually really quite difficult. And I started this, Googling, never saw the truck that I bought it on eBay, and it was an old postal delivery truck, and it's one of the short ones, not a huge one. It's like one of the, it wasn't like the teeny tiny little ones that deliver your mail, it was just bigger, but not that much bigger. And I wanted something small because I knew I was going to want to drive around a lot. Because some of the trucks are, I'm friends with a guy up in Traverse City, and his truck is like 8 feet longer than mine, and he's like, I don't travel more than 30 miles, and I'm a lot different than that. Our events that we do are all over Michigan, so I kind of knew that I wanted to be able to drive it pretty far, so I didn't want this huge rig, and I've like never drove a big car, so I'm like, I have to drive it, I need, and so we get this little truck, and I'm like committed to making it work, and then we have this moment where it's like, this actually isn't going to work. And like 85% of me was just like, I just want it, we'll just make it work, it'll be fine. Like when you don't want to, when it's really hard to step back and like, that was a mistake, and it's way better to cut your losses sometimes and just like eat that mistake rather than go forward and make a bigger mistake. But it's really hard when you're in the moment to actually do that, because you're like attached to it and you have money into it, and you're like, but I just want to get, I was like, I have an event in 2 weeks, like I just need, like I've signed up for this event, paid for it, like I have to get my truck done. And it was like, voice of reason, I think we should start over. And I'm like, oh, start over. So then we had to sell that to someone super sketcy via Craigslist, and then bought a new truck that was awesome. And we picked, I found it online, like transferred a lot of money online to buy it. Again, never saw it. And it was just a long story. A friend of mine was down for a bachelor party in Florida, and he flew, I bought him a plane ticket to Georgia to go pick up this truck that was left at the airport and drive it back to Michigan for me. Just like one of those stories of like how that actually worked. And then once I started with that truck, it was like, okay, this was a really smart move. And that was probably one of the smartest choices that I had to make, that was a hard choice to make. And then from there, the next really crucial part of the build-out process was, I don't really like microwaves. And so if you're thinking logistically, like how do you cook food? I have a griddle on board and 2 burners that I cook stuff in, and I have an oven. But if you put stuff in the oven, A, it takes a long time to cook, and B, it makes the truck so unbearably hot that you just can't survive in that climate. There's no air conditioning. So it's not really that great for a lot of the stuff that we do. We're feeding people really quick on the street. So I kind of knew I needed something else, and everyone's like, well, just put a microwave in there. And I'm like really a purist, and I have these values, and I'm like, but can you imagine at the window, and it's like, ding, your organic food's ready. Like, people aren't gonna take me seriously. I don't want a microwave. I'm figuring out another way to do it. So then I find this Googling, again, online Googling, like researching equipment, and I find this, what's called a salamander, a cheese melter, and essentially it's like infrared, it's like the broiler on your oven, but so the whole piece of equipment, it's like this big, but it basically can melt cheese and make it brown and crispy in like a minute. So it's like my dream come true. But it heats from the top. So I'm like, I need this. This has to work. So, but we bring it, and it's like, ooh, the truck isn't tall enough. Like, it left me like this much space above a griddle. And my mom's like, voice of reason part 2, you're not even gonna be able to fit a pot under there. Like, imagine you have a stock pot on the burner. Like, it's a bad idea, Bridget. And then I had this really good idea of like, let's saw off the roof of the truck and add an addition on and make it higher. And everyone's like, no. My dad's like, Bridget, he used to be a building contractor. I can say this because he's sitting in the audience. He's like, it's a really bad idea. Like, you're gonna get so many leaks and you're gonna have all these problems. Like, you don't chop a roof off and put a new one on. And I'm like, yeah, we are. Like, I don't care what it looks like. Like, I need this to work, and I don't know how else to like figure this out rather than like manipulate the size of the truck, because this is what I need. And I had to really fight him on it, and I had to, listen to my intuition. It was one of the best things I've ever done as far as a hard choice, but it was so the right choice, and I got extra storage, and I can stand up in there, and there's space, and it was such a good choice, but a hard one to make. So that was kind of the build-up process, and then just a pain in the butt to go to the health department. Again, health department, I'm like, I want to have a food truck. They're like, well, like they didn't have any food trucks, and they had never inspected one, and they didn't even know what to tell me that I needed. So here in Michigan, right, in Berrien County, where I started. So it was just like a lot of trying to figure things out on your own, and nobody has answers, and just trying to do research. And I bought like the books online, it's like how to start a food truck and like food truck for dummies, and there's no answers in those. Don't ever, if you're interested, don't buy those books, it's a waste of money. This is like really hard. I'm like, I need answers, and there aren't answers in here. So that whole process was really laborious and really taxing on me, really mentally taxing. It was a really, really hard part. Operating is so much easier than actually getting to that point of lifting it off so it can open, for sure.
Well, how long was it from the time that you came up, when you were talking with your friends and you said Gypsy, organic, that, and to getting through all the build out?
It was very quick. So I would say mid-January, I had the conversation with my friends like, I want to have a food truck and I want to be an organic gypsy. And then I filed my DBA. My mom actually filed my DBA for me and fake signed my name for me through the county so I could declare it in Michigan, because I was still living in California, still in culinary school, and that was in February of 2012. So like a month later, I was like, I'm starting it, I'm doing it. And I moved home when I was done with my program in April of 2012, and I was at my first event in June.
Wow.
So that's part of why it was so frustrating, is because the timeline that I had was not very conducive for like a stress-free, but it's like I had to do it, and because we're so seasonal here in Michigan, I absolutely needed to get it off the ground during the summer. So.
And you've talked a lot about your parents. So were there other people who were helping you through this process too?
They were definitely my pillars. You kind of need your like people in the pen that are just gonna like keep telling you can do it, keep fighting the fight. I felt like a fight. It was like it was really, really hard. So they were kind of my cheerleaders, but more than a cheerleader. And I had other people, you know, my brother. I had a lot of people. I mean, the first few events that I went to, I definitely leaned hard on some friends and family, you know, like packaging up granola at midnight, and I had a farmer's market the next day, and I had some friends that stepped up to the plate and helped me, and eventually I met John Schmidt. Does anybody in here know John Schmidt? From the SBTTC, and he was great because he was someone that wasn't family that I could talk to, and I was like, yes, you understand, and he's a huge food truck advocate. And he was a great cheerleader. So when I met him in July 2012, I felt like I had an advocate and that wasn't related to me. You know, it feels good that your parents love you and support you, but it's like it doesn't really count. You have to. So he was a good person to add to my support team for sure.
So how do you even decide, so you're opening in June, how do you even decide what is on your menu?
I don't know. I just guessed. I did a lot of trial and error. One of the cool, so I had this idea, I saw this recipe online for sweet potato goat cheese tater tots. I'm like, I want to make those. Like oven baked, not fried, of course, because I'm the organic gypsy, I can't fry stuff. So I was at my aunt and uncle's house, and bless their hearts, they owned a bakery, and they knew that I was being ridiculous, and I'm like, I want to make these tater tots. And they were with me when I shredded all these potatoes. It was just so laborious. Okay, what produce and veggies and meat and what products do I have to work with? And then we design menus backwards. So it was kind of the same situation of like, ooh, we have zucchini. And my mom to this day is like, I don't ever want to eat zucchini again. I really overdid the zucchini with her the first year. And I call it zucchini bruschetta, she'll never forget it. And you take like a tender little baby zucchini, cut it in half, decore it, so there's like a little kind of, there's like some space in there, it's like a boat. And then I put like tomatoes and herbs, and then I put cheese on there. And you pre-roast the zucchini without the fillings, and then you put the fillings back on, and then just like give it a little bit more until the cheese gets brown and melty and good. And she's like, I'm never ever gonna eat that ever again. So there was some just trial and error, some just like inspiration recipes, things that I've seen around, and then a lot of it, even all the time with my menus today, it's like, what do we have in season? What can I do what do I have to work with?
Even, so you're working, I mean, organic, so typically, like if we go to the supermarket, it's going to cost more. So I would assume that it costs more at a truck too. So how do you figure out, because you're trying to pass this along, trying to help us with healthier food, but how do you figure out that cost and still make money?
So that's really, really, really difficult, and what really kind of breaks my heart is when we go to an event, and for me to have like a menu item to serve, the amount of effort that goes into that, as far as me coordinating with farmers, buying from them, driving to their farm to pick it up, or them delivering it, but placing the order, figuring out what they have, like, oh, we thought we were gonna have this, but it hasn't, or this spring was like a really good example, it just didn't get hot. And my farmer was like, I planted radishes, they have a 4-week cycle, and I planted them 8 weeks ago and they're not ready. Like, they should be ready, but the weather isn't cooperating the way we want, it's a weird season, I don't have any radishes, and I'm like, okay. So there's so much effort to like actually get my products and get it in our commercial kitchen. And then most of the produce that I'm buying is literally dirty, and it's very, very different. Like if I'm getting cabbage heads or radishes from a farm, it's a small farm and they don't have commercial washing and drying equipment. And if I ordered from a food producer, I would get these beautiful, clean, perfect radishes and like, pre-sliced cabbage that's all shredded and beautiful. We get these, it's just a very different situation. So my economics brain has a really hard time when we go park somewhere, and I've gone through all this effort and spent all of my effort and my time, spent the money to get those products and pay employees or myself to clean them and wash them and prepare them, extra labor. And then we go somewhere and we're parked next to someone selling hot dogs or french fries or whatever, and it's cheaper, and they have no money into, the amount that they have into the cost of ingredients and the labor is so much less than we do. And it's hard for me sometimes when we go park and they have like a line. There was one time last fall where it was like hot dogs and french fries, and they had a line. We started to count the people in line, and it was like 60 people in line, and we'd like get like a person walk up and we'd serve them, and then nobody. So those moments are hard for me, that kind of commitment to just the morals and as far as like healthy food and local food, and really staying true to that and kind of being a purist in that way. But as far as how I've learned to make money, I've had to do a lot of things to figure that out. But one thing as far as the marketing is I really try and sell that story and tell my customers, like, there's so much more value in this, and this is the story, and your dollar, this isn't about your dollar buying, your collard wrap and a salad. That's what we served last week. This isn't just about the impact of that money, this transfer of money between me and you. A, there's a transfer of nutrients into your body right away, but B, that dollar that you gave me, I'm giving that to farmers that's around here. So the impact on each dollar that they spend and what that is doing in our community, it's really awesome and cool. So I really try and emphasize how much we really are sourcing those kinds of foods, because I call it greenwashing. The whole healthy and organic and farm to table is really popular now. When I read about food trends, it's like one of the #1 food trends. So all a restaurant needs to do is put like local and organic whenever possible, and it's like, well, what does whenever possible mean? Because that's not what that means to me. When I say that, I really mean it and take it to heart and spend a lot more money to do that, and so that's part of it. But part of it is, I know I have to be real, like, okay, even if I source, this is like Portlandia, like the happiest chicken, that's from around here, that had a great life, that, whatever, and put it on the whatever, like, you're not going to pay more than X amount of dollars for it. right? Economics, like price ceiling. There's a price ceiling, so it doesn't, there's a certain point where I'm like, I just can't charge more than whatever that price is for that product, and it depends on serving size and stuff like that, but I really have to be aware of that, and I really try and push that envelope. But it's hard when I'm surrounded by people who are competing. I'm competing with other people, and in our country, we have been born and raised in our culture to desire cheap food. It's like one of our values. And it started in when we get the paper in the supermarket of like, this is what food is on sale this week, like a long time ago. And I mean, I don't like to waste money. I save my money, and I don't want to, you know, just like, I understand that, but the conversation I really try and emphasize is, you know, can we not make it about the money to a certain extent? And why is it that you'll go to a coffee shop and spend $5.25 on a Frappuccino and not think twice about it and go to one of our amazing breweries in this town, which you'll see me there, and spend $5-6 on a pint of beer, which I do, because I'm like, somebody made this. This is, you know, made here in Kalamazoo. So much value in that. But if I place food in front of you that's sourced from all these things and made with all this integrity and really healthy, and it's not a huge portion, you think that's a ripoff. Like, that's the conversation I'm trying to change, and it's really hard. But those are kind of the stories and whatever that we're trying to tell through the context of our business and our marketing. And additionally, another way that we do reduce kind of how to find price points that work for people is we do a lot of these cool programs that I created where they're membership programs. So I pre-sell these memberships. So I make you commit to eating with me for 6 weeks at a time. And I do it for soup in the fall and soup in the winter, and then in the spring I do salads and healthy snacks. So you have to give me your money ahead of time, which I'm like, that gives me money so I can say to my farmers, hey, every week for the next 6 weeks, I need 10 pounds of greens, whatever you have, that's what I want. And any veggies that you can have. And then they have a guaranteed amount of what they're growing. They know exactly what I need. They know ahead of time. And so they can plan for what they need. And I can plan to reduce my food waste, which is the biggest thing that I've really been able to do to make sure that I'm making enough money to stay in business is really curb my food waste. In general, we talk a lot about in this country about producing more food because we have a growing population, and you know, there's a lot of hungry people out there. And one thing that I'm really trying to do, not only at a personal level but the entire business, is what are we doing as a business to reduce food waste? And maybe the conversation needs to shift a little bit to not growing more food, but being more efficient with the food that we do grow. So as a business, I'm like, hey, you join our membership. I call it the salad days for the salad, and then the soup club. So it's like you join the soup club, and not only are you making a healthy choice, but your dollars are supporting local farmers and a local business in myself. And you are helping to contribute to finding cool, creative ways to reduce the food waste at you know, the business level of the Organic Gypsy. So those are all things that I do to work around the problems that are there as far as feeding people healthy food that's not super expensive, that is sourced from local producers.
Okay, so before we go to the audience, I have one more question. So is the relationship, because you mentioned farmers a lot, so is it a lot like when you're saying that your dad would drive into the field, is that a lot like what you do now, in a sense?
Yeah, sometimes. I definitely go into the field, and I've picked kale with a couple of my farmers and stuff. It's interesting to think about money and our concept of money and how, you know, we used to barter for things. And, you know, when I get my insurance bill, I'm like, oh, I don't want to give the insurance company my money. It's like a hard bill to pay. I'm like, this is a waste, you know? And I go to my farmers and I pay them for their ingredients. I'm like, I want to give you my money. Like the exchange is different. It's like, what you have is so valuable. And for me, what I'm really trying to do with the Organic Gypsy as a platform is I want to sell more food so I can give farmers more of my money. And that is really one of my my motivators, is like, I want to be able to support what they're doing at a greater level. So I need to feed more people so I can buy more produce from them. And additionally, what I do to create those types of scenarios too is I freeze a lot of food and canned food. So when things are in season, I just buy it in bulk, because that's the reality of a farm. And around here is, you know, we're pretty jaded when we go to the grocery store and you see all of this beautiful produce. It's a pretty magical experience to like walk around and see all of the produce that you can buy any day of the year that's like it's not rotting, it's like perfectly ripe, it's perfectly shaped. It's beautiful. I mean, like, have you guys ever been to Whole Foods and they're like the pyramids of like the perfect produce and like the natural light in there, and it's like, oh my god, this is like food mecca. And it's like that every day, and because it's like that, there is a cost to that. So I really hone in on buying whatever is in season, and I buy a lot of it, and I pickle it, and I freeze it, and I can it so I can buy more of what they have in season, because if they don't sell it, it rots. And I was at one of my farmers. He's a huge wholesale farmer. He's not some like rinky-dink little farmer. He's like a big-time organic farmer. And I was we were talking produce. I'm like, okay, what else do you have to buy? What are you gonna have next week here? And the zucchini was sitting on top of the ledge, and it just had like a just barely little bit of a curve. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, it looks like a perfect zucchini to me. I'm like, yeah, you know, there's no nicks in it. And he's like, this is one pick of one day. These are our mispicks. And he's like, all of these will be thrown out because they're not perfect. Like, because they're not the perfect shape. And he sells to Whole Foods. He sells to a large distributor out of Chicago. And I'm like, just sell those to me. Don't give me the straight ones, you know? So I'm like, restaurant grade. I call it number 2. Like, don't give me your number 1s. Give me something that you can't sell that's perfectly fine. Like, I don't want rotten veggies, but there's nothing wrong with all of that produce. And he's at a point where he's like, it's not even worth me paying my you know, as migrant workers, as employees, to pick it. So it's just getting more into the system and having those experiences with farmers. It's just like, well, I want to buy them, you know, just, you know, pick them for me. And so I'm trying to get bigger so I can do more of that and give him more money for things that are expense to him. You know, that should be revenue, and instead it's an expense, because, you know, it's seed, it's water, it's fertilizer, and he paid employees to pick it. And he's like, we've just been, later on in the season, he's like, oh, I just let them rot in the field. Like, it's not worth paying the employees to pick them. So those kinds of experiences also are part of why I make the choices that I do.
So I'm going to go to the audience, and Renee will help with the microphone. So if anyone has a question, I'm going to have you actually use the microphone.
Who has a question? Let's grab the microphone and I go down.
Oh, no. I'm saying that.
Mom, do you have a question?
No, I don't. But that's a great idea to take the microphone.
Hi, my name is Federico. I grew up in the Dominican Republic, where eating organic, eating healthy is not a privilege, it's not a luxury. Like, you go to the supermarket, and even if you're really rich or really poor, we buy the same vegetables and like produce. So when I came here, I just saw how people eat here. It's just like a tradition, it's like part of the culture. And like at West, where I study, I used to work at the cafeteria, and I would see it every day. Every day, people having Coke for breakfast, tater tots, everything fried. I'm like, how can you even go to class and sit with all that trash in your belly? You know, like, if you eat that, you're gonna be that eventually. So this really, my motivation to come here was to see how you're such a big advocate of how you're basically competing. You're like trying to change a mindset of a nation. You know, how do you feel when, for example, that when you had your stand and you have 60 people in line to buy a hot dog and fries, and you're just sitting there, but you have your passion, you know what you're doing is right, but you just have that long run of it's not only your business, but you're going against a whole mentality of millions of people who live and abide by that, culture, which people don't really see it as, oh, I'm really, I shouldn't have a 32-ounce pop for breakfast and tater tots, but I just grew up by it, so I don't really see the health effects it's doing on me every day.
Right, like most people that are making a lunch choice. So we do an event, so great, thank you for your comments. We do a lunch event every week in Bronson Park. For those of you that haven't been, it's really fun. It's called Lunchtime Live. Have anybody ever been there? What? Okay, so a few hands. There's like 8 or maybe more food trucks in Kalamazoo now, and they block off South Street, and there's live music, and they play cornhole, and it's just like cool because it's just people of Kalamazoo hanging out in the park. It's like Friday afternoon, everyone's like, God, I can't wait to be done. And it's just a really fun vibe. I love it. It's just like all different kinds of people. There's students, there's business people, there's mamas pushing strollers with their babies, and it's just a really cool kind of gathering in downtown Kalamazoo every week. It starts in June and it goes through September 30th, and the truck is there every week serving lunch 11:30 to 1:30. And kind of what he mentioned is, that choice, we make so many consumer choices every day, and it's like my customers and just like the people that are at the park or any other event that I have, they're not thinking in their brains like, oh, well, if I buy something for the Organic Gypsy, I'm making a lifelong health commitment and health choice, and this, well, then every dollar that I spend here is going to triple in the local economy. I mean, they're like, do I want a pizza or a collard wrap with a salad? And I really believe in moderation. I actually think it's one of the most important things we need to hold on to. I don't believe in the just eliminate all of this food. Whatever that thing, there's so many demonizing diets, and I'm always trying to cook for everybody, so I'm like, oh, you're paleo, okay. You don't do blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, you're vegan. Okay, yeah, so you demonize this thing that they see, so I'm always trying to please all these people on the diets, and, we're really attached to, our values of this is the best way to eat. And it is really hard. I feel like I can't make someone make that switch in when they decide what they want to eat for lunch. And part of it, I'm trying to, though, with our marketing and the kind of storytelling of hey, this is what your food is and this is why it's great. But it is a real challenge, and it is much more, I feel like I'm a pioneer in kind of having this conversation, and when I have those hard moments, I just kind of stick to my principles and my morals of this is right and this is the right thing to do. But it's hard because I'm smart and I studied economics and I work hard and I want to earn money, and I feel like every day I kind of choose to make less money because of my morals, and that is a hard choice. And but I just believe that the better good, that is higher than dollars. But after working in the food industry for 5 years, I'm I totally get why the system is set up the way it is. I totally understand why food is cheap, because it's about making money. And I just try and work with it as best as I can. A personal victory that I had along these lines is I competed in a national food truck competition out in Las Vegas in January, and it was for the National Potato Expo. So the only restriction for what we had to make as far as recipe was it had to be a potato recipe. And I'm perfect. My dad grew me a whole field of organic potatoes. They're actually one of the highest pesticide filled fruits and vegetables that there are. So I was really excited. He grew me all these organic potatoes, and I was okay, perfect. So I came up with this soup recipe because I was at work and I was making soup for my soup club, and I'm what am I gonna make this week? I'm I have potatoes, I have cabbage, I have carrots, some onion, and I'm I don't want to just a boring potato soup that everybody eats. So I made up this potato soup recipe based off, I kind of had a little bit of an inspiration from a magazine article that I ripped out. I keep a file folder of inspiring recipes and ideas that I have, and every once in a while at work I'll just flip through it and be oh yeah, that's right, I ripped out this recipe. So I see this recipe of potatoes with green tahini sauce, and I'm ooh, I have sesame seeds. I'm gonna make a soup and blend in the tahini sauce into the base of my soup. Like I just like, you know, start like ad-libbing. And so I go out in this competition and I'm feeling like confident and like I make the soup's really good, and I go there and my competitors, so the top 3 people competed on stage in Las Vegas. So there were more people that entered, but the actual cooking competition was just the 3 of us. And I get there and I'm like, okay, my soup's really good. Like, you know, not that I'm gonna like win, but I was feeling confident. And I look at what they're serving, and the one guy is like tater tots with bacon, no, chorizo, tater tots with chorizo, and like some like special sauce, I can't remember, and like a cheese sauce or something. I'm like, why would anyone choose to eat a vegan gluten-free potato soup over that? The other person I competed against was like a double stuffed baked potato. So it's like a baked potato filled with like mac and cheese, pulled pork, bacon, and this special sauce called crack sauce. And I'm like, I don't stand a chance. And I was like, oh, I just like came here with this, like, what am I doing? That I came here with like this stupid potato soup. Like, just like, you know, the night before I was like, just, you know, just go out there and do the best you can. Like, that's all you can do. Like, you're here now. And so I go out there and I make my soup or whatever, and I end up winning the competition. And it was a win for me. I mean, the prize money was awesome. I won $5,000 and it just went right in the bank on Monday, and I used it to buy, I mean, I just needed it for my cash flow. So it was awesome to win the money. And I mean, it was just a cool experience to cook on stage and be in Vegas and meet some really cool people. But really what it did for me is reconfirm that the path that I am on is a good path. It was a victory for healthy food for me, to beat out tater tots and the mac and cheese baked potato had bacon and pulled pork. I'm like, I like 2 pork products and mac and cheese. Like for me, it was like a victory for my purpose and what I'm doing. So those little things, I hold on to those moments, and the people I feed cancer patients and that are really trying to eat clean, and when they give me their stories of like healing them and health, I just hold on to those things when it's hard, because it is really hard.
Does someone else have a question?
I just have a comment if I can. Hi, my name is Dave, and I was invited by Stacy. Excuse me, I don't know if you knew it, but you said something that was, you said, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, zucchini bichette, you'll never forget it.
Yeah.
And I just think that is like, honestly, like a very good marketing, you know, logo or campaign, or maybe it already is. But yeah, my experience with food trucks is through Portland, and my friend Jen lived there too, but I have an uncle that lives there, and most of it is though, Mexican food late at night. So I do think the
no judgment. Remember,
yeah,
moderation.
No
judgment.
It tastes so good. But I really did. I just want to say that I really loved your honey chicken salad, because I am a big fan of chicken salad anyways, but I don't know if you give out the recipe or not, but I loved it. Thank you.
I'll try and remember what's in there. My meat farmer is probably, don't tell anyone else this, but he's probably my favorite farmer, and his name is Norm, and he is just the best guy, and his wife's the school teacher. And when I go out there to the farm, like the chickens just live outside all the time. They're never in a cage out there and doing it. Like I said, those like how to start a food truck books, like I didn't talk about that stuff. What's really made my business possible, mostly I would say at this point as far as profitability, is catering. So that's mostly what I do. It's actually, most people I think that like the food truck parks here on this day and parks here on this day, but really most of what we do is catering. And that allows me to plan out, I'm guaranteed money, and that is like the cash cow for food trucks, because you know, if I prepare to go sell food and it rains for Lunchtime Live or the farmer's market, I just lost about 80% of all the money I was going to make, which is a really hard situation to be in, because by that point with the weather, I've already dumped all of my money into making my products to sell. So that is a profitability disaster. And so I would say the catering is huge because I essentially eliminate my food waste, and I can plan for what I'm going to do, which is just like a totally different ball game as far as operating. So that's one thing. And the second thing is I've gotten really creative with the type of menu ingredients we make, in ways like I don't make baked casseroles, because if I bake a casserole, I'm committed to the whole casserole. And if I only sell one piece of the casserole, I have to throw out the rest. So most of the ingredient, like the menu items we do, it's like I've completely compartmentalized the prep ingredients. And then that allows me flexibility to, let's say, with the health department, like I only have, 5 days to use the product. So I've roasted broccoli that I just paid an arm and a leg for from a local farmer, and we roasted it because we thought we were going to sell X amount of whatever, and it rained or nobody came or whatever. I can go home back to our kitchen and I can make a broccoli frittata and freeze it, or I can make soup and freeze it, or I have a couple cool programs that I've done to help absorb those kinds of food waste. For me, the profitability is the food waste. If I can eliminate food waste, I can make money. I can't afford, with the organic ingredients and the extra labor, if I waste food, I lose so much money. That is so key. So most of the programs I've created help me reduce my food waste. So one of it is the pre-ordered meals, and then another thing that I've done that's actually pretty cool is I have a text club. So let's say I go out and I think I'm going to sell all this food and I don't. I have all these text members, and I text them and I'm like, this is the special, this is how much it is, and reply yes and I'll come deliver it to your house. So I have programs like that, and then I also cater for families every week. And it's a really cool program because I know, I have one woman, she hates broccoli, but she loves cauliflower and sweet potatoes and black beans. And she'll eat chicken and bacon, but she doesn't want to eat other pork products. Like I get their whole, like, tell me everything. Like, I like cabbage, but I don't like raw cabbage. I like it roasted. I'm like, okay, set me up for success. Tell me everything that you and your children like, and, she's like, well, I don't really like to do a lot of dairy, but every once in a while. I'm like, okay. So I have her, and then I have, a cancer patient with this really restricted diet, and then I have these I have all the people that I cook for every week, and they help me on my path of eating local and reducing my food waste, because they don't know what they're going to eat before they get it. But I guarantee that it falls along their likes and dislikes. So when I have that extra product, I just weave that into my clients that I cook for. So they help me do my job because they're open to the way that it's designed. They further just make me able to stay in business, make money, and all of that. The flexibility for the menu is huge for profitability, because if I'm stuck serving a certain thing, I just can get totally screwed on food waste.
Real quick. So how do you leverage yourself in your business, or do you not want to? I mean, you can't go out and clone. It sounds to me like a lot of your recipes are coming out, off of out of your brain as you're doing them. Mm-hmm. So.
Like leverage myself as far as like my power as one person and where to attend to.
Yeah, if you want to have 2 trucks, or if you want to do 2 banquets in one night or something like that. I mean,
I hired a new woman who is awesome, and she is really great, and she's able to really do a lot in the kitchen. So I'm able to leverage the truck to do multiple events in a day, because now I have 2 people. Like, I can tell her, she knows enough that if I set her up for success and I'm clear and say, hey, this is what we're doing, she has enough autonomy that she can create menu, she can cook, and it's delicious, and she's responsible and organized. So I can really make it so, like last Friday we had 3 bookings, and I couldn't have done that without her. So part of it is really leveraging her expertise and my expertise, and I tell her, I'm like, I'm the salesperson. Like, that's my job, and your job is to help me produce the food. So I've really been able to do a lot more with her. She's been huge, and I can see that in small organizations that if you get the right person, I feel like it's not like me being double, but it's close. It's like 1.5 of me at least, 1 3/4. So that's been huge as far as how I want to use that extra woman power. My capacity has grown. So I'm like, well, I need to make more money because I'm paying her, and because we know our efficiency is up and our productivity and all that. So I've already been thinking of that, and I would say I know the number one thing I could do to just make more money, just like more money, is the wedding industry. So for bottom line, I'm thinking, okay, I could probably invest, you know, $10,000 or $15,000 and buy myself a truck and a couple grills to pull my trailer that I have, and I could put not that much money in, and with an employee like her, I could make that $10,000 back in like a month of doing the right kind of weddings. So I think I'll probably maybe do something like that. As far as something that I want to do that's a little bit more fun, I have 2 other things that I'm interested in as far as like projects and additional things to add. One is I make a root beer out of local roots that I dig up from my dad's farm and maple syrup. So it's like a healthy kind of soda with sparkling water. And I hit some pretty major roadblocks trying to get that out into production. And I just need to put more money into the project. I don't know if I want to. There's the artisan beverage industry is it's really saturated, and I don't know about adding a whole product line. That's not the smartest move for me to just make more money. So I feel like the wedding catering is a good idea. And then the other idea I have is to get a little mini truck, probably like the postal truck that I bought and sold on Craigslist, and to have like a 1-person operation at a farmer's market, just to always every week have that presence there. So those are the things that I think about, but sometimes I have to think of like, what do I want to do and what do I need to do to make money, because they're usually different.
Okay, so have you ever considered turning your losses into long-term profitability?
What do you mean?
So you say that you have to throw all the food away when it rains, and then you can't sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier you mentioned that there are a lot of hungry people. I mean, especially here in Kalamazoo, there are homeless people all over the place. So why not give that food to them?
I do. I actually, and that's what I've learned, is that if I don't throw food away very often, but before I throw it away, I do work with Ministry with Community, and I've volunteered there personally, and I've also brought food there that wasn't expired. I made them food, and I just went in to serve the people in the community, just to give back. And there's lots of room for that, and I think that is, there's so much. I spoke to a class at KVCC for their food program over there a couple months ago, and I just looked at them and I was like, what we need from our young people is really creative ways to use up the food that is getting wasted from restaurants, from supermarkets, and from farmers. Can you guys please solve this problem? Like, the bright young people, this is what needs to be done. So I do donate to those kinds of places, but I try and not get to that point.
Do you market that?
No, but I just know the contact people at the kitchen and donate it. I try and not like, you should get, give me your money, because I mean, I could do a better job of that. I just feel like it's tooting my own horn. As far as like, so if you, like, let's say you go up to the truck, you're like, oh, this is cool. She gives, food to the homeless people whenever she has extras, kind of thing.
Right.
Like, you want to know that as a consumer.
So you were talking earlier about the fact that people just come to your truck and, or even before they come to the truck, they're thinking, do I want pizza or do I want, something organic? And so you were saying there wasn't really much besides your pitch of your vision that you give to them that compels them to buy. And I just think that something like that would be much more compelling.
For sure. What I've found, maybe I need some marketing help, but the situation of ordering a food from a food truck just feels like a difficult platform to tell all of those stories and get all of those messages across. And it's something I'm trying to do a better job of, but it's like, I feel like, if you're walking down the sidewalk and you're hungry and you're like, I want food, there's a lot of information that could be shared there, and I know I'm not sharing it all, but I'm definitely, if you guys have ideas for how to do that better, that's definitely, it's a hard situation, because it's like, you're literally standing on the street and it's just such a quick glimpse as far as consumer stuff.
Are you on social media?
I am.
He has a question.
I have a hashtag. Eat like a gypsy and kale to the yeah. Kale yeah was already taken. That's my favorite.
I just have a quick question. First of all, I think what you're doing is fantastic, because having lived out the West Coast just like you, I mean, it's fundamentally a very different lifestyle. And of course, they have a ton of fresh stuff readily available, so it makes it a lot more different than here. But having said that, though, it seems like your model is, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
No, we can't.
Oh.
And I want to make sure it gets recorded.
Yeah.
It'll come out on the recording. Thank you.
You know what? I just,
There we go.
yeah.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah, it's a very simple question, because it seems like you've got a model that's very different than most of the food business. Your ingredients are driving your menu as opposed to your menu driving the ingredients, right? So that said, it's very broad. So it's almost like saying, hey, I've got a food truck and I'm selling healthy foods. What would you like? Do you like any of this stuff? Now, when you go to a restaurant, when you select food, even in a grocery store, you already have a certain cuisine in mind, if I want Mexican, Italian, or whatever it is, and you go and get the stuff that you need. So in your case, it's a little different. So how do you sell to the people that are hungry, just like you said, I need food? That process.
Like, oh, this is probably maybe the #1 question I get asked. Oh, you have a food truck. What kind of food do you serve?
Exactly. Because you mentioned about Portland. I mean,
Yes.
downtown, that area, that
It's like,
parking lot.
yes,
all-
a biscuit truck,
Exactly.
grilled cheese truck, chicken truck.
So have you thought about narrowing that platform that you're offering? Just kind of like
I have.
Rick Bayless? Or, you know?
My friend's dad, who owns a business, he's convinced I need a gypsy witch all the time. That's like my staple. He's like, Bridget, you need a gypsy witch. Every time I see him, you know, it's like every Christmas, it's like, Bridget, have you figured out your gypsy witch? I'm like, oh, I don't really, but my hard thing is like, what is one menu item that could get nailed down to like a category of something that somebody knows, they can like make the association other than, like a sandwich that I have ingredients for between the months of April and October. Because what I have to work with is so varied that it makes that pretty difficult to actually, but it is one of my challenges because people are like, oh, yeah.
Because food is a very repetitive business.
It is.
And if you like that food, you're going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
Right.
So that becomes what they call heavy users of your
Right.
franchise, and if they keep coming back, you're going to make money off of it. In fact, if you keep charging them more and more, they're going to keep coming back.
So what I tell my customers is like, you just need to trust. And that's like what I do with my soup club. People email me, like, what kinds of soup do you have? And I'm like, well, sometimes we have a coconut corn chowders. We might do, here like a roasted butternut squash lentil soup we've done in the past. Like, these are some examples, but you don't get to know what it is. And part of what you're doing is just trusting that we can, you're putting the trust in our hands and what we're making. But it is a hurdle because it's you look at McDonald's and they're one of the reasons why they're successful is because when you go to McDonald's, you know exactly what you're getting.
It's consistency.
It's consistency. So you don't really know that. So what I try and do, like the last 3 weeks, we've done a collard wrap. So it's a collard wrap and the size of the portion is the same and the price is the same, but the insides are different. So I try and engage people at a broader level, but it is a very different way of how we're used to making the consumer choice in a different way. And it is one of the hurdles of the way that I do business, for sure.
Just as a suggestion, maybe have a base that people would love and they're going to keep coming back and have the surprises on the top that really drives your ingredients.
Sometimes I do that with like rice, like a coconut curry rice, but the, seasonal veg and stuff. I do a little bit of that. Some of the reason why I change up menu items because it's like, I'm sick of making that all the time. But they are good suggestions, and it is a truth to the way that, like I said, the food industry is.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Great work. Thanks.
Great.
I'll just one more question. One more. Yeah.
First of all, I want to say thank you to you for what you do. I've had a health crisis in my life, and in order to overcome that, I've started to do raw. And But and I'm back home living with my parents to get over it. And in trying to explain, and this might be elementary for some, but how do we convince other people the difference between a regular cucumber and an organic cucumber, and why you may want to pay a higher price? Can we start there, and then I want to ask just another education question in general.
So one organization that I lean on heavy to get my information from is called the Environmental Working Group. And every year, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the Dirty Dozen. So what they do, one of their big things that they do is they're interested in protecting the workers. Like when we go to the store and we buy our food, we don't even really think of the people behind all of these products. And that is something that with the meat industry, the people that work in the slaughterhouses in those conditions and that have been more brought to light. But as far as produce goes, it's the exposure to toxins and what the workers on these farms are getting exposed to are really, really terrible toxic substances. And so the Environmental Working Group, the EWG, I can't think of their website offhand, but if you Google Dirty Dozen, it'll come right up. And they do research every year. So based on the weather, farmers are using different chemicals and pesticides for their crops. And those chemicals, what they do is they test, I think they test the actual fruit or produce, and I think they might actually test people that eat them. And what they're looking for is the trace of chemicals. And it's strawberry season. We had a strawberry shortcake party at the farmer's market last week. And like fresh strawberries or Michigan strawberries are so good. And I put a link on our Facebook with a link to the Environmental Working Group talking about strawberries, because it's like, I'm all for local produce. Like, I love Michigan produce, but we have to be aware of how even the local stuff is grown. And in the strawberry, one strawberry had up to 18 pesticides in it, a conventionally grown strawberry. And that is a real concern for what those toxins, and they just really disrupt our systems in our bodies, and it is a real concern. So when someone asks me like, what's with the organic thing, it's really complicated, and basically it's like you gotta meet people where they are, and I'm like, just learn that natural means nothing. You go to the store, natural means, that could be any word. Do not buy it because it says that. And obviously, reading the labels and stuff. But as far as produce, I would stick to the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. The Clean 15 are the list of produce items that have the least amount of pesticides, just due to the fact of how they're grown. So like avocados are on there. And as far as the Dirty Dozen, there's strawberries, apples. So when you go eat an apple that who knows how long that sat there totally perfect, there's a reason why, and it's not healthy for you to eat the pesticides and the waxes. Potatoes are on the Dirty Dozen because they fumigate them after they're picked. So educating starting with those, I think, is important. Organic dairy products don't have hormones and antibiotics, so I think that's important. And when I'm looking for eggs and meat products, my farmer Norm, he sells his eggs at the co-op, and he sells a couple of his meat products, and what you want to look for there is that they're pastured, which means that they're walking around and eating grass, and that the grains are non-GMO.
So you said the natural thing, ignore natural when it says that. Do you agree with that with anything packaged, processed that says organic? Because to me, my mom thinks that's better.
Right.
That's okay to buy the organic.
It's a really interesting conversation to be like, oh, well, it's gluten-free, it's healthy. Like, no, those are gluten-free cookies in a package that expire 8 months from now. Just because they're gluten-free doesn't mean they're healthy. And it's the same thing with organic. Like, oh, organic Oreos. It's like, it's still an Oreo. But, I mean, if you're going to eat an Oreo, I would rather have you eat that Oreo. But in general, I'm not trying to, the only thing I might be really against are hot dogs or like chicken nuggets, but I really don't think the answer is by putting any food down. Like, I'm like, eat pizza if you want to, eat meat if you want to, eat sugar, whatever it is, I really think, not demonizing and eating everything in moderation is like the answer to this. But I really think that really the number one thing that maybe if I could inspire you a little bit to, and the number one thing that you can do for your health is like eat half vegetables. And no matter what diet plan you follow, that I think is the best thing that you can do for your body as far as health.
My last question about the education is, I know you're only one woman, but I think my life would have been different. My illness wouldn't have happened per se had there been better education. So how, as a community, do we help the kids realize mom and dad may be on a limited budget? You know, my dad cooked for us when I was growing up. We had hamburger helper and you know, Kraft macaroni and cheese a lot, fish sticks, you know, canned vegetables. So how do we get that mindset? I didn't cook well for my kids. How do we do that?
I think a lot of that, you know, there's a lot of talk right now with the schools and the food in schools, and I don't know how much you guys have gone into it, but like most of the schools have like Pizza Hut or KFC, you know, there's a lot of like corporations, because the schools are broke, they don't have money to feed people healthy food, so it's like this big problem. Schools are broke, kids need to eat, a lot of kids don't have money, which means the schools end up paying for the kids to eat. But they can't afford real food, and they've gotten rid of their lunch ladies, but it's a bad deal, because it's like as a grown adult with a pretty good, like, you know, I'm smart, and I've spent my, you know, the last 5 years of my life really dedicated to food as health. It is hard to make healthy choices, and it is hard as an adult, and I'm on this path to like choose to eat salads and all of the stuff over all of the other choices that we have, like the pizza, the candy bars, the hamburgers, like whatever it is. Like, it is hard as an adult, and when I have those moments, it's like, oh my God, I had a Pringle a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh my God, I get it. I get what, I mean, this is like crazy. This is addicting. Like, oh my God, I understand why people get addicted to this, and this is all I eat. This tastes, this is, I'm like, the reaction in my mouth is insane right now. Like, I can really empathize with that, because it is, you know, it's intense, but I don't think we can expect children to make those choices for themselves. So I'm a big advocate of like, we just need to remove those choices. Like, there shouldn't be, it's too hard of a choice as an adult, you know, when I put myself in my own situation to make healthy choices, and like, how do we expect a kid who's used to eating all of these things, and they're in the lunch line, like, is it really a surprise they're not eating from the salad bar? No. Like, why would they? When they can eat chicken nuggets or a personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut. So I think I really believe in our ability to reform the school lunch, and Jamie Oliver is one of the huge advocates for that, and he's really doing a lot of work with like really educating the masses on what are we feeding our children, and how are we expecting them to drink chocolate milk, which has more sugar than a Coke, and go and be productive at school and all this stuff. So infiltrate into more areas.
Any other questions? Well, Bridgett will probably be here for a little bit afterwards. So how about a round of applause?
If you're interested in the text club, there's some cards up there, or you can go on our online tour website. And definitely come to Lunchtime Live. We'll be at the Farmers Market Saturday too. www.theorganicgypsy.com. Very clever.